Welcome to part 3 of our Strip and Dip Strip Along, our 2025 edition. Of course, annual occurrence. So here we are in part 3. You should have all of your diamond blocks done and assembled. And now it's time to add the background to the sides to make it into a rectangular block. So two ways we can do this with the scrappy strips around it, which I'm going to show you first. And then, of course, if you wanted to use a single background, you can do that as well. So let's start with just the scrappy strips. So you should have cut a whole bunch of strips from your background choices, scrappy or not, longer and then shorter according to your pattern. So we're going to start, these are going to be oversized. Just know that, and we want that because we are going to trim everything in the end. So we're just going to start here in step number 6. And so in this part 3 of the strip along, I will take you through from step 6 and all the way through to step 11. So starting with our background pieces, we are going to be sewing them to two opposite sides here first. And you will notice that it's longer. So we just want to make sure that we're kind of centering it, and it does not have to be rocket science. You can always just look and have the pieces extend on both sides about equally. So that is how we want it. We want to sew on the both sides, opposite sides, just making sure it's centered. It should extend on both sides. Sew here, and then we're going to press outwards so that we get to a unit that looks like this, pressed outwards on two sides. And now it's time to add our other two sides. So taking two more rectangles, and again, we want to center it so that we have about the same amount sticking out on each side, like this, and on the other side, like that. And then sew those pieces on. Doesn't have to be super accurate, which is kind of a fun process. So you can kind of just go with the flow. And once you have that done and pressed outwards, your unit should look something like this. So you can see there's just overlapping pieces here. So now we're going to grab our shorter pieces and we're going to add them kind of close to the ends. So I say in the pattern about 1/2 inch from the end here, and that is because when we press this out, we want this to become a rectangle. So we have enough fabric over here, but we don't need more fabric on this side. So about 1/2 inch from the tip here, we're going to add these guys on the 4 sides. So just mixing up my colors, and then I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. And just sew those 4 sides. Once we have that done, our piece looks like this. So pretty odd looking, but don't worry. From here, we're going to trim this. But before we do that, I want to show you how, if you were using just a single background, how you would add that to your diamond blocks. So setting this aside so I can show you the trimming for both a little bit later on. So bringing in our background, I had you cut rectangles. So first off, we have 2 rectangles. They are wrong sides together. This is very important because we need those mirror images. So I'm just going to use my squared ruler here. I'm lining up my last slit corner to corner, and I'm going to cut this apart. And the reason why I like cutting through a slit is that I know I'm not going to veer off and ruin my fabric. So I can cut a stack of these and be perfectly safe. So once we do that, you can see we have 2 on the top here that will end up being the same angle. And then the other ones on the bottom are the opposite angle. So we are going to sew these to our block. It will work out somewhat like this. So 2 squares are enough for a 1 block. So here I have my block. ready to be sewn on the sides. And again, we need to do opposite triangles to here. Now, this is not going to be the perfect angle for this. So again, this is oversized. So when we position this first side, I do recommend here on the thicker end that we have a little more overhang on this side. So at least I would say 3/4 of an inch or so as we position this. And so this little tail feels like it's very little, but it's okay. It's going to all work out. So about 3/4 of an inch on this side, little tail on that side. And now we're just going to sew these two sides and press that outwards. So once we have that, our unit should look like this. And so now we're going to add the triangles to the other sides. Now, if you want to, you can trim this off. I usually just do it after I sew my second ones on because we're going to be trimming this anyway. So after I sew this one on, here now, when I lay this down, I actually let this little triangle stick up just a little bit here on this side. And then we're just going to sew down all the way through to add both sides. And then, of course, this is going to press out like that. And then once you have that sewn, before you press, you can actually just trim these little tails either with just a rotary cutter or your scissors if you want to. So now, after pressing, you'll have a unit like this. Yes, it looks a little odd because it comes in and kind of curves around, but that's okay. We're trimming this, remember, so we're all good. So let me go back to our trimming. And that means that we have moved on into step number 10. And my favorite tool to do that is my Stripology XL ruler. So I have just some suggestions in the pattern if you don't have an XL ruler how to do this. But the length of the block needs to be 16.5 inches. So I'm just going to put an arrow here on my 16.5 and another one on my 0. So I'm going to start with my scrappy block here. So what you want to do is find a horizontal line on the ruler. And I like to use just this white line that is going to be white all the way through from this side to this side. And the first thing I'm doing, I'm just lining it up tip to tip right on in the center where these points come together. So my white line is going straight through here. Now the second thing we want to do is center the block or the tips between the 0 and the 16.5 inch slit. So I can see here that my point is kind of on the half-inch line, half-inch slit. And on this side, it is not quite a half inch from where I would be cutting. It's about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to split the difference and just slide the ruler a little bit to the right. So now my cut is going to be right here. So here I have about 3/8 of an inch and then about the same on the other side. So I'm good there. This is going to be our most important lineup. Now, I do tell you in the pattern that we also might be able to line up these 2 points, but I'm just going to tell you it's not always going to happen. So we're always going to go by this one, number 1, because as we lay out our quilt, we want our points to be straight up, straight down, because those are going to come together because of the layout. Those side ones, nobody's going to notice because they are all kind of jagged anyways. So this is most important. Once I see that it is centered, I'm going to make my cut through the 0 and then the 16.5. So now we have 2 perfect sides. And next step, we are going to fold it in half, just aligning the raw edges. And we also want to make sure we're lining up our little points here. So lining up our raw edges and our points. And now I'm going to create a fold down here. And this is because our rulers are not long enough to cut this the other way. So easy peasy. Now our second cut is going to be, we want our width of our blocks to actually be 7 inches. So I'm going to grab myself a sticker of another sticker to put on my 7. And I'm also going to grab another color because the center of our point, so that half of 7 is 3.5. So I'm going to use the 3.5 inch slit and just put a sticker right there, because now I can align a horizontal line here on this fold, and then I can slide this over until my arrow is pointed right at the tip here, which means that I'm centered between the 0 and the 7. And I should get, if you look at where your marks are, your 1/4 inch little dotted lines between the slits should be on the edge of the seam, right on the seam. So I'm going to make my cuts through the 0 and then through the 7. And there is our block, all trimmed up. Beautiful. So there's a reason why this is not a 1/4 inch, because we're not going point to point. There is going to be a little gap when we put the blocks together. It's supposed to be like that, so don't worry. So now I'm going to show you how to do this with just a solid fabric. And it's a very similar process, same deal. We want to find our horizontal line here. From tip to tip, I got my white line lined up, and then I'm going to find where my cut is going to be and split the difference. So I have a little bit on each side. So same thing here. My blocks are coming out the exact same size, so about 3/8 from the cut, and I can make that cut. And again, I'm going to fold. So my points are coming together, and those edges are clean and aligned. Aligning my horizontal line on the bottom of the fold, and then sliding this guy over until it is centered right on the tip. My arrow is centered on the tip of the block. And then I can easily see that my 1/4 inch line here next to the slits I'll be cutting through is right on the seam. So I know I'm going to get a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance there. Make my cuts. And welcome to, we are going to end up with a nice rectangular block. So there it is. We're not all the way done. So in this part 3, I want you to finish your large blocks to this place. And then next week for part 4, we'll finish off our half blocks and get our quilts all laid out.